Hello, I'm John Beattie and welcome to Cask to Glass, the whisky podcast where I explore the heritage and flavour of Scotland's national drink and the world's favourite spirit. In this episode, I speak to Fred Maitland from East Coast Whisky. Now, he runs tastings and tours, and as a psychotherapist, he believes whisky has a role in friendship. Fred, thank you very much for talking to me. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Before we get kicking off, how do you take your whiskey?
That's a great question. I tend to take it pretty neat with maybe just a few drops of water because I mainly drink single malts, I have to say.
And are you careful about where you get your water from?
No, I feel like the East Lothian water supply is good enough here. I do get your point. If I lived in a city and it was pretty city water, I might change it. But yeah, our water's fine. It's just off the hill.
And if you were to pick a favourite whiskey, what would it be?
Oh, that's like the $1 million question, isn't it? I really, I've had so many lovely whiskies. It's hard to pick an individual one. When people ask me, I lean towards Highland Park because Brora is pretty inaccessible. But if I can get my hands on a Brora, I'd probably choose a Brora overall. So I particularly enjoy my kind of light to medium peated style whiskies. So both of those have that quality to them.
You brought up East Lothian, and that's where we go to babysit the grandkids.
No way.
Just where are you in East Lothian? Just describe East Lothian to people who might be watching from the US.
Oh, I'd love to. So East Lothian is this wonderful county just to the east of Edinburgh, and I am in the county seat of a town called Haddington. And if you want to imagine, it's almost like an island, apart from you have hills to the south, but all the rest is this wonderful coastline of about 40 miles of mainly sandy beaches and terrific walking, terrific sea swimming, even some surfing. And yeah, it's just a wonderful place. And the great thing about it is you're half an hour from the centre of Edinburgh as well. So people come here, well, they come and see us to drink whiskey, but they also come here to play golf, enjoy the countryside, and then during things like the Edinburgh Festival to use it as a base to go on into town and see some theatre and such. So yeah, I love it here. The light's great. I mean, today it's like California. The sun is shining.
The light in East Lothian is just different. As you say, it's the home of Muirfield and North Berwick and Archerfield and Lough Ness and all these great golf courses. And you're right about the light in East Lothian.
Yeah.
When you go through, there's something about this. There's a har sometimes. Maybe it's something to do with being so close to the sea. There's a gentleness to the light. It's a pretty light, isn't it, in East Lothian?
Yeah, and I think we tying that in loosely to whiskey as well. I was walking through a field of barley this morning with the dogs.
Sounds like a song.
It does. Maybe it is. And I was thinking a lot of the barley here ends up in Scotch whiskey. And I was thinking, well, maybe this field will be in a whiskey 10, 15 years from now. We're drinking from the glass. But yeah, obviously amazing place to grow grain and other things as well. So the light is really special. And I mean, that's true throughout Scotland, but maybe it's because there's so much sea, and then the further forth being to the north that you get this extra reflection. That's what I was thinking. But
yeah, and it's drier. East Lothian's drier, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm in the west, and we're in the middle of a hot spell. This is the most unusual Scottish weather of all time, apart from I think 1995. But normally in the west coast, it's bucketing.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. But East Lothian, the weather's lovely.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a microclimate here. So we tend to get har, which you mentioned, which for your American listeners is sea fog that rolls in. If you live in California, it'll be similar to what you might have experienced in, say, the Bay Area or down in LA or whatever when the fog comes in. But that will boil off by about 11 o'clock, and then the sun is super shiny. And yeah, it does tend to be drier. And we are having this uncustomary heat wave, which has gone on for weeks. But yeah, it's beautiful. Conversely, we can get snow occasionally coming across from Scandinavia, but
when it's the easterly. So the reason we're talking is we have a mutual friend, you and I. And I was in his shop, and he just mentioned that you've got this really interesting business. Before we get into detail, talk me through that business and the whiskey element to it.
Yeah, I think the business, I try and run it as unbusinessy in a way as possible, because it's really about the people that make it up. And a lot of what we talk about whiskey is fundamentally about production, say, or marketing or regions. I'm certainly happy to talk about that. But often it was like, well, how do you reach the people who drink it? And how should it be enjoyed? And how do people access some really quite old and rare whiskies these days? And for a while there used to be bars, but most of the old stock has gone. And obviously there's some wonderful new distilleries coming through. I know you were talking about Rase recently as an example. But I was really keen to provide a bridge between good old whiskey and the people out there using technology. This partly grew up during lockdown, but also even before then. So using the internet, whether through social media or through Zoom or whatever, to host tastings and connect people, actually, as it turns out, all over the world into whiskey, predominantly from Scotland, but not limited to. And yeah, it's just organically grown. So we put on a whole range of things, from online tastings. We host people here for whiskey residentials, and that's a thing. And we also do whiskey meals, and we do whiskey tours. And we even occasionally do partnership bottlings with people as well. So there's quite a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak.
We'll get back to that episode in a second, but the best free way you can support the podcast is just hit the thumbs up button on this video and subscribe, so you get new episodes every week. It also helps lots more people find the podcast. So thank you. I guess before lockdown, it was probably more person to person, was it? It was come and taste this whiskey with me here, and I'll show you the whiskies, and these are your 8 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's a great model. Then we had lockdown, didn't we? Then what kicked off?
Yeah, and I think you're right. So I was passionate about food and whiskey, which is not talked about enough in terms of pairing things together, I believe. But then once all my events got cancelled, like everyone else, and my wife suggested, well, you work with people online anyway, why don't you try and tie the two together? And I just put a few feelers out. I had no idea it was going to go so big. What was different, I think, about what I offered is I went on a bunch of online tastings at that time because the distilleries were offering them, but they tended to do it in a kind of school style. So if I was a distillery, I would teach you about my whiskey, which is necessary and useful, but I wanted something more organic that was engaging, and everyone, no matter their knowledge level, could get involved. Obviously help, because I could send them samples of the whiskey and we could all drink together, discuss it, and learn so much, because I noticed everyone had a piece. Some people, as you know, are passionate about the history. Other people love the nature. Other people like the technical side. Other people like the marketing. It really comes together. So by the end of an evening, you've built up a whole picture that you perhaps didn't have before, and you've enjoyed some great whiskey. So as much as I've learned myself, I've learned so much from other people along the way. It's been great.
You're a psychotherapist, is that right?
Yeah, I'm also.
That's why you were working online.
Yeah, that's right. That came into it, and people often ask, well, how can you be doing both? Surely they're like exclusive, and they're not, because I think fundamentally what links them is storytelling. Like with psychotherapy, I'm listening and helping someone tell their story and where they're going in their life and where they've been. And I don't just look at it in terms of struggle, but also successes, and really helping people find some sort of fulfillment. And whiskey is also more of just exploring, again, people will tell their stories about their aspiration, but also what they enjoy. But there is something I think that I should mention. One thing I noticed, I was involved a lot in men's group work, particularly. And I noticed that there was a high proportion of people who were, say, into yoga and into meditation, and all wonderful things. I'm not knocking them, I need to be clear about that. But what I was wondering was, is there a space for the guy who likes a dram or plays a round of golf or goes fishing? And where could they meet and find some sort of community? So that's actually been a big part of what I do. So it's kind of like a safe space for people just to hang out. Now, we're not necessarily talking about our issues, but it also provides companionship, friendship, and connection, which, especially during lockdown, but even in the times we live in now, are really, really essential for our mental and physical well-being.
That's interesting, because in my other kind of job, I've interviewed lots of people when it comes to things like loneliness, and that we know that you can have indications that count towards your longevity, things like the flu jag, things like a good diet. But it seems that top of the list is do you actually speak to lots of people? Do you have a social life? And that's what you're trying to do, is it?
Right.
Through tasting whiskey together.
Yeah. So what that means is, like, if it's just a space. I suppose in the old days people used to go to the pub a lot more than they do now. But there's also a sense of, like, it's a safe space. We can talk, we can hang out, we can share an enjoyment, which is also really important for psychological well-being. It's like a shared passion to have an interest. I was reading the other day about that's such an important thing, is to learn something that's completely out with your previous experience, get enthused about it, share it with others. But then building on that, actually meeting face to face has been great. And I've seen now, I don't know how many trips we've done, 5 or 6, and people who only met online coming together from around the world, literally flying in from Texas, wherever, coming to Scotland, enjoying the landscape, being with each other, and discovering that they all get on like a house on fire. It's been really, really encouraging. And people keep asking me to do more, but I can probably do 2 really good tours a year with the work involved. To get around that, I invite people here, and so we're fortunate to have the house next door, so people can stay there and then come through and be with the bar, which is worth talking about in its own right, I suspect.
Before we get to that, you started to mention food, that you think we don't look at whiskey and food pairings enough.
No. So,
just explain that.
So the issue is that people tend to think of whiskey and food in probably one of 2 ways. Haggis, the great Scottish national dish, and also perhaps a bit of seafood. But what you actually discover that once you get into it, you compare a whole range of different foods with whiskey of different types, because there's actually a huge variation in flavour of whiskey. And also when we get a bit more nuanced and say talk about peated whiskey, for instance, the smoke flavours which we use in cooking, incidentally, like we talk about, can really enhance the dish. And so actually working together, worked with maybe 3 or 4 different chefs now, and kind of see what they've come up with. And it's been right across the meal. So sometimes it's the sweet flavors from dessert, sometimes it's the main dish, and it doesn't have, it tends towards meat, but we do vegetarian things as well. And it's been mind-blowing. I had no idea.
I have no idea. Just give me some examples then of dishes that would go with certain whiskies.
Well, you could probably start with seafood. So scallops go with everything. Honestly, amazing. A scallop and Talisker, even if you're going to oysters, which I saw the other day. But one of the dishes I had recently, and again, touching on East Lothian, was local venison. So it's obviously organic, free range, just roaming the countryside, turned into a roulade by this local chef. And then we had this amazing, it was like an Aberfeldy in a wine cask. And it just raised both things to a whole new level. So it was really, really great. And then we might finish out with more of a space side, like a lighter whiskey with a delicious kind of custardy type dish. And these are just off the top of my head. But
Sure.
Really fun to explore.
Well, when you've done your whiskey tastings and lockdown came and we went online and you were doing, I presume that they get the whiskey or they buy the whiskey and they have the whiskey in front of them as they're tasting it with you in a lesson. Is that how it works?
Sort of.
Not a lesson, a tasting.
Yeah, tasting. I sense what I basically just started to come up with different themes over the years. And it might tie in a little bit to different price points, but I've tended towards mid to upper end of the scale just because it facilitated collecting bottles. So what that might look like at the highest end is if I do a distillery that's been closed. So recently we did one on St Magdalene or in Lithgow, as you might know. A more niche one like Milburn from Inverness.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favourites though was a partnership we did with Brora. I was in the process of reopening in the last few years, and so to taste whiskies together from that were distilled, say, in the 1970s that people hadn't tried before, and to have the brand ambassador talk about the history and show
Right.
pictures. It was, yeah, it was quite an organic and wonderful experience. And indeed, we followed that up by doing a tour up there a few months later. So yeah, sometimes they can be just a little bit of a celebration, and other times we can focus on a distillery, or we might go on a region. Um, yeah, and I've pretty much covered most whiskies now in that format. I think the only one I haven't done is Macallan, and mainly that's to do with the insane prices of Macallan and the putting together a tasting of the same level. But it's not necessarily a bias against it. But yeah, we've tasted a lot of great whiskies. I think through the taste, well, I personally probably tasted, I'm trying to work it out this morning, 3 to 4, 5,000 different whiskies, and over the last 10 years. I certainly haven't owned them all, but it's been an amazing adventure. But
And where are these people? I mean, where's the market?
I mean, they're all over. So what you tend to get is in different regions. Say if we just take UK, there'll be groups of people in London, there'll be groups of people in the north of England, maybe in the West Country. So I will connect with one or two of them, and then they'll spread the word, and then those who want to will come and join in. So that will lead to some diversity, and then they'll also be right across Europe. And we even brought people in, say, from Singapore, from Malaysia, Hong Kong, further afield like that. So the issue there, as you can imagine, tends to be time difference.
Yeah.
So what we do is we also record the session, and so then people can watch it back later on. That's become increasingly popular as people weren't in lockdown and just going about their busy lives. So yes, we might record on a particular Friday evening, but they may watch it 2 or 3 weeks later. And yeah, they'll send me questions at that point usually, and yeah, we'll work it out. But it's fun.
I love telling the amazing story of Scotland's whisky industry and sharing some positivity about one of the incredible things this country has given the world. Now, if you want to share some positivity too, leave us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to the podcast. It takes you 10 seconds and will help Cask to Glass reach a much, much wider audience. When you start somebody from, let's say, Singapore or my country of birth, Malaysia, and they want to taste the whiskey, what's your entry? What's your one that you go, try this. This isn't going to blow your head off to start with. You'll like this to start with.
Great question. So yeah, usually I get asked the question, what's good entry level? And that can be a mixture of taste and of price.
Oh,
Another way I like to look at it is sometimes I get asked, I'm traveling, I go into a hotel bar, I'm presented with 10 choices and the max, which one should I go with? And they're quite clever in how they choose those 10 because they're quite distinct in the flavour. Personally, I always rate a Talisker 10 because I think it tells you everything about whiskey, even though it's got a sort of chili spice to it. For people living in Asia, I think that has quite a lot of appeal. I then, well, as I mentioned, Highland Park as well, but you could then, there's everything from your basic levels of Glenfiddich for more of a typical space cider. And then you start to see some of these new distilleries starting to pop up as well. Here, though, I try, entry level, I probably do a range. So I would get one from each region. So that would mean, for instance, your Campbelltown.
yeah.
Springbank 10 is another really good, easy one to go to that teaches you a lot about what that region's like. And I mentioned Talisker already, and I mentioned Speyside. Lowland is a little bit more tricky because many of your listeners will know that it's an up-and-coming area. It's been huge, it went away, and now there's a lot of new distilleries. I know you featured a few on your podcast. So whether you're going to head towards, say, what jumps out, say, Lindores, as kind of a nice entry level to that. And obviously there's some closed distilleries, like as I mentioned earlier, St Magdalene, which is an amazing whiskey, but it's really unusual. It doesn't really taste like anywhere else. Then coming up into the Highland region, wow, you're spoilt for choice. Probably my other go-to would be a Clynelish 14, as in from north of Inverness up in Clynelish, up on that coast, as a sweeter but slightly saltier. I think again that's a great example of what whiskey should be. Yeah, That's a few ideas anyway.
That's interesting. So when people come here for the tours and the tastings and you'll do the food combinations, again, where do they come from? And what do they say when they get here? What do they think of the place?
Yeah, great question. I think if they discovered whiskey, they're sort of halfway to absolutely loving Scotland. That would be my view. And I've noticed that it doesn't really matter what the weather's doing.
Really, that's the beauty, isn't it? Well done.
And actually, people are usually transfixed. I mean, it's difficult not to be, whether we're in a more kind of seaside location, say we're up at Clynelish, or we went up to Orkney, so you have more of the islands, or you're on the west coast, and I'm taking people to Skye or to Isla. So they're usually, and it's important to me as well, to introduce them to the landscape. And I just think they love the kind of combination of exploring some of the local food, obviously the whiskey, some of the nature, the environment, and then also the history. I mean, it's so ripe with history these days. And I was chatting to one of our drivers. He said he does more tours now for Outlander fans than he does for whiskey fans. And that just shows you how passionate people are, particularly from the States, and coming over and rediscovering their roots and stuff, which is important. So, but if they come from further afield, they're still taken, because I think what we often forget is just what a unique environment Scotland is in terms of being so green with mountains. Often most other countries, when you have mountains, they're more jaggedy, just more rugged looking. There's a smoothness, and that's just something uniquely Scottish that captures our imagination, I believe.
And where do they come from, these people? Again, same thing, Singapore, the East, America, Europe?
Yeah, exactly. So there'll be people from Europe, there'll be people from the States, there'll be people from the Far East. Haven't had anyone over yet from Australia, though I'm trying to encourage my friends from the Heliers Road distillery, which is in Tasmania, to make more of an official trip over here next year. I know he comes over to Scotland already, but intriguingly, just as an aside, they take their grain from Scotland and they ship it to Tasmania to make whiskey. I just find that bonkers. But they said that was the best grain they could get. They'll use Australian casks, but they really want their Scottish grain to make their whiskey, and as particularly the peated stuff they do. So, yeah, go figure.
That's quite a story, isn't it? So they take the grain, ship it from here to there,
all the way from
Tasmania.
To Tasmania to make whiskey, and then ship it back again. So many bottles that I've collected over the years, you'll look at it and you'll see it's got an American label. So it really makes you think about the journey any whiskey might go on in its lifetime before it's drunk. So, yeah.
When you do your tours, I'm conscious people come from around the world, and you do your online tours.
Yeah.
You're not governed then by the same things that would affect an exporter, tariffs, etc. But you still want people to come here. And any indication from the Americans about this summer? Are they still booking and coming? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, the people, nothing will get between a man and his whiskey.
That's a good line. That's a good line.
And there ain't no mountain high enough, I would say. So
they're coming. They're still coming.
Yeah, they're still coming. It's not an issue, and I think yes, of course, we can get into talking, and obviously I know a lot of people in the industry and the current issues with sales and the impact of tariffs and all that will have, but the level I operate, which is a lot of single cask whiskey. Now, if you think there's 250 bottles come from a particular single cask. That's a lot of, not very much whiskey to put out to 7 billion people or whatever. So you're pretty much guaranteed that someone's going to find it, have enough interest, and then want to come and see where it's made and explore the land where it comes from. So, there's always been challenges, and there will be challenges in the future, but I think people are still wanting to travel if they can. I had quite a sad story, one chap I knew in Israel who he was up in the north of Israel, and as you know, there's been a lot of conflict there, and so a couple of years ago he was struggling to come, but he said, look, I'm still going to make it, I just need a break. So there you go. He even in a war situation, he got on the plane and got over here, and I was like, well, that was quite something. But people will travel. That
is quite something. So I'm interested in this element of online tasting, and then people coming here. What have there been that you've seen the big changes in the market. You talked about there's we most people think there's a bit of a whiskey lake. We've had lots of new distilleries. I guess still the big names are the big names, are they? Or what are the big changes when it comes to the people you deal with and what they want to taste about Scotland and see about Scotland when it comes to whiskey?
I think a lot of people, the people I deal with, are keen to educate themselves. I mean, whilst we talked about beginners, most of these people have tried enough whiskey to
Sure.
want to get on a plane to try some more in location. And we're all not, I mean, there's so many changes over the last few years. And we went from a period back in the 90s where you'd pick up some of the bottles that cost say 8 grand now for 60 quid on the Royal Mile. Like I saw them at that time, and it's, that market has changed, beyond anyone's imagining. And so for a period going back, I mean, probably the heyday of independent was like the late teens, 2017, 18. There was huge amounts of whiskey coming out. But then the distilleries realized, hang on a minute, we can't be giving it away anymore. Cask prices went through the roof. It became very difficult to be an independent bottler. Some are actually still doing quite well. I do some partnerships with the Thompson brothers, and they're really going strength for strength. They're up in Dornoch as an example. But yeah, I think about this, and I'm like, where do we begin with what changes? I think where we're at right now is an interim period where the numbers are down a bit, but there's a lot of new distilleries starting to appear. Some will make it, some won't, because that's just the way of things. If you study the history of Scotch whisky over the last 200 years since it was legalized, you see the same cycle of boom and bust being repeated. And what's the bottom line? If you make good quality whiskey and you figured out at least some routes to market, you're going to be fine. Worst case scenario, you'll get bought by someone else. That does happen. But if it's good whiskey and you've got the parts that you need, you'll be here in years and years to come. So I'm happy to help the new distilleries as well. So I do
Yeah.
some of that.
Do we do, as always, we talk. I mean, I talk to you and time just flies. It's the problem with this kind of program or this kind of issue. And
Sally.
I want to go back to what you talked about earlier on, which was this role that we don't discuss much, which is to do with friendship and your hobby. And as you're a psychotherapist, so whiskey has this ability, as all drinks claim they do have, to bring people together. But it's really important that people do spend time together, isn't it? With a common interest. And as you say, in terms of dementia, expanding your brain to think about a new topic.
Yep.
And I hadn't thought until I spoke to you today that whiskey has a role in that. Whiskey has a role in just keeping us all connected.
Yeah. And I think throughout its existence, and I think we can imagine as being distilled spirit made from barley, water, and yeast in Burns for certainly a few hundred years now in Scotland. Then obviously it became legalized, went into mass production, and there's a role that it's played. I mean, again, people will talk about the shadow side, the alcoholism, the problems
Sure.
of whiskey. But I think if it's respected and you're able to have a reasonable amount and not just get pished, as we like to say, yeah, it's an incredible stimulant for conversation, for good feelings, for community, for warmth. And I've seen it time and time again. I mean, in the next week or two, there'll be this incredible festival on Isla where they have Fèis Isla, which have been coming together now for years and years and years. And you see pictures and you can see people have a few drams, are enjoying the music, the sunshine, and there's just something really special about that. And that's repeated across Scotland. But yeah, within my group, it's sort of a place to enjoy something, but with the old and rare nature of most of the bottles I offer, it's not something you're just chugging back. You have to savor it, because why would you chug back a dram that might have cost in a bar over £100? You're going to cherish it. But for me, obviously, I keep the cost down, so it's something you can savor here, but you can still access. So yeah, it's really great.
Speaking of talking to you, just before you go, we've only got a minute or two left
Yeah.
as these things happen. What's the plan for you then? Is it more? Do you want more people to come in to the country, or you want to get more online courses? What's the plan for the summer? Here we are. I'm talking to you before the summer.
At the moment, I'm keen that people continue to come to the tastings. We've obviously already set up. We're pretty much booked out for Skye, but I'm already planning for Islay next year. So to get involved in the tours, you need to join East Coast Whisky. We have a good WhatsApp group of about 120 people. And yeah, just reach out. Also, if you want to come visit, make it part of your Highland and Scottish itinerary. I should mention, it's really important, that I've got the largest open collection of bottles in Europe. I think it's about 850 bottles. And
Do we know where I can come and get some? Just
come down and have a drink.
relieve you of them.
Yeah, exactly. Come to Haddington. But you can come and stay with us and I'll take you through it. We can create tasting. So there's that angle. But yeah, I just keep creating events and people keep on coming in. It's just great. And mainly for the love of whiskey and a good chat. And yeah.
I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous of people tramping around Skye and then Islay. I mean, if you've never been, just if you're watching this or listening, if you've never been to Skye and Islay, you have to see these places, don't you? You have to go. People talk about the fairy pools in Skye. Oh, it's not that impressive. It is. If you go up there, the setting of that, the setting of some of the things on Skye are unbelievable, aren't they?
And I'll also, as you mentioned, Isla as well, and to support another new distillery, Ardnahoe Distillery, which is next to Cowleela, and between that,
been there.
You look out the window there at the Paps of Jura across the way, and that is almost a religious experience.
Yeah. Well, when I was there, I think I said on a previous podcast, when I was there with my former rugby captain Ian McLaughlin, he said. We spoke to the manager. Said, "Yeah, you can see the killer whales. You can often just see the killer whales horsing up the sound of Jura. And it's paradise.
Yeah, it really is, and you can't. It's so much more than just whiskey, and there's so much more to it. And I'm just enjoying just opening a few doors for people to walk through around it, and it's tremendous, and long may it continue. So. Yeah, really appreciate you having me on today and just to talk about some of the aspects of it. And
you should trademark that. It's so much more than just whiskey. Or maybe you already have. It's a good line.
I haven't, actually. That's just the truth.
Yeah. Fred, good to talk to you. All success. Thank you.
Great. And we'll hopefully see you down here.
We're never going home. We're never going home. Can we stay with you in Scotland for the rest of our lives? We're never going home, never going home. All it takes